I'm here with Jan Seiler in the lovely Manchester, England, preceding the 1080 Summit. You'll give an awesome presentation later today. I'm super excited to learn about it. But we're just here to connect, talk training, talk eccentric stuff.
Yeah.
Super excited to learn more about that. But first, how are you doing today? And thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Fantastic.
Pleasure.
So, quick background. You've been with the Swiss Federal Institute of Sport for
Right.
6 years-ish. Before that was some time with Swiss Ski. Some time with Under Armour before that, and a bunch of other stuff. But basically, he's been in high elite sport all throughout Switzerland. Yeah, I'm looking forward to learning. So we'll dive right in. If there's anything kind of noteworthy or anything you want to toss out to the camera, feel free to break the fourth wall if you want. But we will get into it. So working with a federal institute, seeing a variety of kind of stuff. The joke that we had earlier was there's only two sports that actually use a barbell in this sport. Right, powerlifting and Olympic lifting. So if an athlete comes up to you, right, it's the first month kind of working with them, and you're just like feeling each other out, and they go, well, like I don't do this in my sport. Like I'm good at my sport. I don't need to do squats or the eccentric boost because it's not hard. Not easy. Kind of like, how do you navigate that conversation? How would you kind of teach?
Well, it's sometimes really frustrating because where I'm working, we normally are supposed to get elite athletes, and then what we basically have to do is really basic stuff. So start to touch a barbell for a lot of sports, which is insane at that age or at that level of specific performance level they have, and I think it's important then to explain why we're doing this, but maybe not we are doing this because barbell training is important, but if we use the barbell and if we want to work on muscle tendon length and stuff like that and core stability, so maybe the load should come from here or from there or whatever. So I'm the lucky guy that can also work with the best Swiss weightlifter at the moment, so that helps also to understand.
They're probably more into it.
for him, it's super important, and it's maybe a bit a different approach that for other sports. But what I then often see is that we're still lacking a good education at younger age, that we can then really effectively use the barbell for training. But normally, depending on the age or also on the training age the athletes have, I definitely introduce them to that kind of training using the barbell. For me, there are always like two lines. You have a technical development line, and you have a performance or a high, let's say, high stimulating line. So if I have to make them learn to use the barbell, I definitely need other tools or exercises to make them, to give them a high muscle tendon stimulation, as using leg press instead. But with the goal that in a couple of months or maybe years, depending how it goes, they can use the barbell to make also high intensity training. But it will never end up that I will force people to do that if I feel that no, it's not going to the aim we are looking for. So maybe there is another option. We can also work it out.
Yeah, being flexible and then getting that like common win. Like we're both here to get you better at your sport, and like I believe that it'll get you better. But within that conversation, is there any way to describe it that you found that like works well, whether it's for like a coach or for an athlete? And I'll give an example. Like Nick earlier said, the average speed of the Premier League is going up every year. So if you stay the same, you're technically getting worse. So that's like a super easy, like why you should train speed. Have you found any like anecdotes or examples, or just like it's a quick light bulb?
Well,
or is it...
yeah, speed is I would say easier measurable, and you can really see that in the game. Okay, this is really important. If you don't get to that velocity, you probably not get the ball or something like this. I think strength as a supporting factor is sometimes a bit more difficult really to sell to the athletes. What I recognized the last couple of years, that if we talk using strength as a preventive measure, then it's way easier, because athletes, they don't want to get injured. Or also to the younger athletes, the parents are really open to make their children work for prevention, you know, even if they don't understand why do I have to be so strong to be a faster player. So this is often a good strategy to bring them into the gym with consistency. And then anyway, normally athletes, they feel that they get stronger and they feel better and they're more robust or more resilient. And then thereafter it's only about make a good programming that coming out from increasing maximal strength levels to increasing power output, which is obviously the best you can have for almost every sport.
Yeah, injury is the thing that we can all agree on. That's like that's the gateway drug.
Yeah.
And then after a few months, like, oh wow, I feel better. You know, oh my performance is, and the rest is history.
Yeah. Yeah.
So kind of picking back on that question, so they're in, right? You've been training with them for a few months, and you know, let's say that they have a little bit of a training age before you, so they like run well, they're like strong enough, right, above average. So let's say they're like above average at everything, but they're not like amazing, or they're there to get better with you. Kind of how do you take that athlete from above average to like great? You know, like where would you start?
Yeah, I mean generally for us it's important to make a good assessment at the very beginning. So also taking the physiotherapists into the boat, and they make a basic assessment. We make the diagnostics, strength diagnostics, so isometric force testing, loaded jump and loaded jump testing to get an idea of the profile, and then really to pick out I would say the weakest points, but also pick out the strongest points. That we are not only looking after the weak point, we have to follow the other part as well, because there's probably a reason why this strongest points
why there's successful.
Yes, and from there, then depending on what the issues are, we go for a programming. But to come back to your question, yes, if there is a certain level, let's say a good level in our eyes, then we have to look more for programming variables or periodization things where we have to manage the load, because often it becomes we go up with the intensity because we want to improve, but that also means that the load management has to be way better, or you probably are able to train less because you're stimulating more effectively when you're going into intensity. And this is also something that coaches or also athletes not all the time accept, because they have time to train, they're on site, they see all the strain, so often they feel that, I should do more, I have to be there, I have to do more because they are also doing. But this is maybe not the most efficient way at the end if you are able to train at a very high intensity.
So lean into the strengths when appropriate, improve the weaknesses or whatever is not, up to par, and that next level of training where it's like, hey, can we consistency, buy-in, just not have to fight to train hard. Okay, cool, now let's make our training high-low model, have a good training week, be more intentional about like fatigue management, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So,
absolutely.
So quick intro, about what you believe in, good training. So now we'll get into eccentrics. So first, whenever we say eccentric boost, that is what I call like the can crusher. So the 1080 synchro goes down at 0.1 meters a second, and you can't like stop it, right? It measures how hard it has to pull you down, basically.
Yeah.
So that's what eccentric boost means. So eccentric ability, right? Like I would assume the audience is familiar with triphasic training, right? Eccentric block, isometric block, concentric. We always say eccentric ability. absorb force, even though you don't really absorb, you create, but that's different. That's a different thing.
Yeah.
People do their drop landings and stuff. So it's this thing that we've all heard of, but what does that mean? How do you test it, right? What are your numbers that you're kind of looking for? Like, to put your finger on someone's, quote, eccentric ability, like how do you do that?
Yeah. So I mean, just to be upfront, most of the people are still afraid if they hear about eccentric training, because they all the time see like you have to carry like 300 kilos on the back, and it's definitely not that, because everyone is doing like Nordic hamstring curls, so which is naturally for most of the athletes a supramaximal eccentric stimulation.
They do it without knowing that they're doing it.
Yeah. So what we are doing in our testing, actually, we do those loaded jumps up to the load where you have your own body weight, so 100% of your body weight, additional weight on your back, and we pick then out actually the peak force when you do counter movement jumping as a value of eccentric force capacity. But that's almost all we do when we're looking off the triple extension movement. We do also testing for the hamstrings and stuff, which is a bit different. But this is normally the value we pick up. Okay, you have a great absorption or recoil capacity by elevating this value. Okay. And from there, if this is weak, often this is also related to weak counter movement capacity without any additional weight. We then try to stimulate this eccentric phase by often starting using slow eccentrics, but trying to approach maybe to start at 100% of your concentric load, and then go up step by step. When it comes to using the boost with the 1080 motion synchro, it's an isokinetic mode, so it's differently, but it allows you also to stay under control of what you are breaking then. And then it's often more like they have to learn what does it mean. Am I only braking? Is the focus braking, or is the focus pushing? Because this makes a huge difference then from activation point of view. But they can learn it quite quickly, and then they also feel that it's maybe not only the quads that will get a good stimuli, but also the overall system. Because if you're in a squatting position under that bar, which is pushing you down, and the machine is just stronger than you, then it's insane, the tension and the stability you have to create to really don't get, you're not crushed down because the velocity is slow, but that you really get the force also to your legs. So this is often the challenge. But I mean, the advantage of being isokinetic, and you're not actually having this 300 kilos on your back, that makes you sure that nothing will happen, and you can really adapt to the machine by deciding by your own what's the intensity I'm giving in. And this is the good point of adaptation and getting confident to that kind of work and stimulation using eccentric overload training, compared to when you really go under the bar and using like the weight releasers. Well, most of the time it's just a single rep mode. This is still okay, but when you're using the leg press, then really the goal is that the external load is pushing you down, which is a bit more scary, obviously. So I think only from this point of view, so the mindset is more like okay, I'm confident to do that, so I'm also applying the maximal activation to that kind of work.
Yeah, so it's a good point to describe it like an isokinetic, which is normally concentric. This is isokinetic eccentric. So it's pulling you down at 0.1, but you can give a 2 out of 10 effort or you could give like a 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's a good point with the mental piece where like, man, like if you can only squat 100 kilos and there's like 140, you know, it's different for sure.
Yeah,
So that's been a big light bulb for me, is just like this self-regulated or auto-regulated effort.
Absolutely, yeah.
But also it's just like the Smith machine, you know, it's what, 20 something kilos.
Yeah, 27 kilos on your back, and this is super safe.
Crazy.
But then the different in terms of stimulation is especially that at every millimeter or angle you're touching, you're like 100 or more percent. You know, you're not dependent of the load that your weakest point can tolerate.
It's up to you.
Yeah, it's up to you, and this is completely different to any other kind of eccentric training, I would say. But then it's also highly taxing for the central nervous system, because you get so long time under tension, and it's long time under very high tension. So this is then important. How do you program it? Because this accumulation, this can definitely be a bit of a destroyer also for the central nervous system if you let it go to an overshoot, let's say.
So going back to the testing, just to make sure that I have that right. So you do a counter movement jump, so it's body weight.
Yeah.
And then you work up to a squat with 100% body weight?
So it is still jumping.
Yes.
Still ballistic.
Okay.
Yeah, this is still ballistic.
Is that on force plates? Is that on the synchro?
Yes, this is on force plates.
You're looking at the eccentric force of the load, right? The counter movement part.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha.
Exactly. So we build it up from body weight and 20, 40, 60, 80 up to 100%. Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So when you do your testing, you've done your just good on-ramping, right? They're familiar with you. When it's time to write an actual eccentric program, what's like a typical 4, 6, 8 weeks? Is it like all eccentric boost, but it's a 2 out of 10 effort? You know, is that how you progress it? Or do you go from more of like a yielding isometric to like a heavier to shorter time? Like, how do you just phase, you know, let's say 4 to 8 kind of weeks? Is it tenity only, some dumbbell, barbell work?
Yeah, well, it depends also what's the background of the athlete. Have we already done this kind of blocks the years before or not? So then it's a different approach. Normally, I think you have to start in a kind of tempo training where you probably not, even not more than 100% of your concentric max, just to get an idea, to feel the eccentric phase a bit more consciously, and then build it up from there. But with the guys that already have experience, we prepare them through traditional heavy loading, barbell loading, classical barbell training, squats or deadlifting and stuff. And then maybe you need one session to get into it again, just to feel, okay, it was like that the last year, but then they're quickly back into it. And I mean, normally this kind of work, and this is important to understand, you do with athletes that they are pretty strong already.
They've earned it. Yeah.
They are robust enough to tolerate that load. Because if not, it's if you go too fast in that progression, it's a bit critical.
Sweet. So now let's get a little bit more specific. So it's kind of general eccentrics, how to test, how to like think about, describe. You know, you have so many different ways to create an eccentric stimulus, right? So now with the 1080 specifically, so there's the eccentric boost, which is just crazy to think about.
Yeah.
So with the 1080 synchro, I'm so jealous of everyone that has one. What have been some of your favorite uses? Obviously eccentric boost, or maybe things that have been a little bit surprising, or just working with a variety of athletes, some like super elite, some like average, let's say, like just any stories or anecdotes, or just like how has the 1080 helped you do your thing better, right? So that's super open-ended, but like specific to you kind of using the 1080.
Yeah. Well, it's not only about the eccentric part, but I would say at our institute, with the history in strength training we have, also from the time of Werner Günther, you may remember the videos where he's jumping up the stairs and that stuff.
Oh, classic. Every now and again that'll pop up on my Instagram, you know.
Yeah. So this is also a bit of our background and tradition in strength training. So we have a long history of using eccentric training for athletes, and the 1080 motion synchro definitely made it way easier and more safe, as we already discussed, to go into that high intensity eccentric stimulation. But not only on the isokinetic, slow, more controlled side, but also on the super fast eccentric side, which definitely is at the end the more important one, I would say, for most of the sports, because there you're really trying to create faster muscle phenotypes. And what is good that is you can accumulate repetition using an eccentric overload doing plyometrics, because if not, if you're outside the machine, you have to do like single repetition AEL stuff with the dumbbells or drops or things like that. And if you go fix the cable to the belt on the machine, you can just go repetitions of 10 or 6 or whatever. Also here you will see, if you look at the data, the performance drops quite quickly because the stimulation is so high. But to be able to use the whole spectrum of the eccentric velocity, or from high load to lower load, but adding speed into that so easily, this was really a big changer.
Yeah, just tapping the screen. It's been super interesting to have so much control, because we'll do like mechanical perturbation sometimes. So you'll do like 10 kilos concentric, maybe like 15, and even just holding it, right? As soon as the eccentric phase starts, that'll like kick in, So just the ability to like, if you're doing like 10 jumps in a row, as soon as it feels the concentric start, it'll kick in. But then as soon as, it just like releases immediately. So super smooth.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And athletes like it. They really like it. It's perfect. Yeah.
So the eccentric ability, I kind of bias that towards the boost, but we could dive into the eccentric overload. So that's simply just the concentric load and the eccentric load are just different, and the eccentric's a little bit higher.
Yeah.
So how do you kind of apply and program that? Is it percent based? Is it kilo based? Is it always like the same percent, like 10 and 15, but then would you go 20 and then like the same percent? Kind of how do you apply and program?
To be honest, normally I try to maximize it. So I would probably not maximize it at the very beginning to get them used to it. So if we say maximize, the ratio is 1 to 3.
200%, yeah.
Yes. So now we're talking especially of plyometrics. Because what I want to create is the high braking force. The output then it's important as well, but if you increase the eccentric load, you also increase the concentric load. So the output is also a bit maybe changed by that.
Yeah.
So it's not natural. You got an overload and then you're just body weight jumping off the ground. But then just to target those braking forces, normally try to go to the max ratio. And then it really depends on the athletes. If they're still able to handle this high load in a smooth transition from eccentric to concentric. So it's a lot about just looking how they execute.
Your coach's eye.
To be honest. And we look at the data as well. But for me, it's often like, okay, I want to go eccentric, then I want to do it the right way, so it's a high eccentric stimulation. And I mean, if you're using the boost, then it's different because, as we said, the athlete is deciding by himself how much he puts into it. But if you're using the jumping stuff, then it smashes the athlete down, and he just has to be reactive. And if you see that this is not possible, then obviously it's too much. But to keep the ratio at the max also means that probably the transition then it's better from eccentric to concentric, because you don't have a ratio from 1 to 2 where when you go up the eccentric, the concentric load is then also maybe too high to make a good transition. So I really try to keep that maximally open.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So keep increasing the eccentric as long as it looks good.
Yeah.
If I
to be simple.
Mm-hmm.
Be simple. But then in the progression, we look, okay, let's go up kilo by 3 kilo, or then look, okay, what happens with the power output or with the concentric velocity, and then we adjust a little bit. Yeah.
Sweet. 200% for everyone.
Yeah, almost.
Almost.
Yeah. Not in the progression at the very beginning, but as I say, for most of the athletes,
you're trying to get everyone
that I
there.
put into that, they're ready for that. But I mean, we're talking about okay, we have like 50 athletes at the center, and we're using that not with all of the athletes.
Yeah,
never far away of that. So yeah. You have to be prepared for.
So last question on that. So what exercises, because not every exercise is built different, right? Like certain loading styles make more sense for the squat plate versus the bar versus just one quantum, just as an example. What exercises do you like for the eccentric boost? Like you had that supine leg. Yeah, that one?
Yeah.
So what are your like 3 favorite exercises for the eccentric boost, and what are your 3 favorite that you think do really well for the like 10 reps, 200% eccentric overload?
So definitely the leg press you're talking about.
The single leg one?
It's definitely super good, because what's the feedback of the athlete is, okay, I can focus only on that part, so really breaking or pushing against the barbell, and it presses you down, and the core obviously is out of the game. If you are squatting, then it's a bit different, because the whole system gets really highly demanded and forced to full activation. So actually the leg press, we developed it because of we had to work around injuries, so we couldn't load the back, but we were looking for high stimulation eccentrically anyway, so we tried to do it like that, and it works really super good. So this is, I would say, the number one. Then what we're also doing is using the mode, but maybe by doing exercises that are outside the machine. So as the Nordic curls, where we try to pull out people from a more closed knee angle, because those angles we never touch it by doing normal Nordic stuff.
Interesting. So more flexion. So
yes.
It's kind of the beginning.
So
of
they lean back in the Nordic. So someone has to push up the ankles, so they can still activate the hamstrings, and then they're just pulled out by the machine. They get high stimulation from the very beginning, so the full range of motion actually. That works super good as well. And I think these are the most important exercises here. And then on the other side, more the fast eccentric stuff, it's pogo jumps or counter movement jumps, depending a bit on what we are looking for.
Is that with the squat plate or with the bar?
No, we actually come with the cable directly from the machine to the belt. So we have a bit of an angle, but it works perfectly fine. And then what we also do, it's some specific stuff with the weightlifter, where I do a push jerk, and he's in his specific position like that, front rack position. And then I give him a eccentric boost, just to the point.
Super short range.
Yes, to the point where he would actually accelerate the bar into a split jerk, but then he's just like doing the push out, and he feels really good in that exercise, especially and I think this is important. We have to make a direct transfer then into a split jerk. You know, so if he goes then to the normal bar, which is important because the way of the barbell is completely different. As compared to
rhythm,
the Smith press.
Yeah.
Yes, and then it's really like, oh wow, great feeling.
Interesting.
Kind of post activation for sure, but maybe also from a purely. Yes, it's just different, but it's for the same purpose at the end.
Yeah, makes sense to me.
Really good.
Yeah. All right. So last, kind of what's next? So whether it is for you and what you're doing, kind of general training, if you had even more time to experiment with Eccentric, you know, what are you kind of most curious about? So, you know, having so much experience and on the synchro is like pretty hard to come by. So thank you again for chatting with me. But like what's there's always more, you know, like what's super curious in your mind? You know, if you had more time and more athletes, like what's next for developing athletes in Switzerland?
Yeah. Well, I mean, regarding this type of training, it's also about to become even more effective. You know, what if we are using that high stimulation? So, what's the volume we need? Because everyone is also looking after more effectiveness, because we have to do this and this and this. So this is probably one important thing. Then what we were trying to do is also more using the sprint machine for heavy assisted stuff, especially in alpine skiing also. So we try to work more on the dosage of eccentric forces by really maxing out the sprint machine load, which is 60 kilo, I think. So it's completely different.
Yes.
Assisted sprinting,
yes.
You know. And then go into like perturbation stuff. They have to carry like barbells or have to rotate mat balls and stuff, and they're pulled and they have to follow a track, you know.
I think I saw that video.
So we're actually not sure what is this really giving to the athletes, but the athletes, they really like it.
Which matters.
Yeah, and especially if I have an athlete that is maybe at the end of their career, and we're still trying to look after new stimuli, where we can keep her motivated for training, but where we also think, okay, this is maybe a piece that will help her technical skills on the snow, because she learns to use eccentric forces a bit more smoothly or stuff like that. So we're trying a lot of things into that direction, but yeah, it's still a bit trial error, which is super important in that business if it stays on the secure side.
So it's a little bit more still eccentric stuff, right? Because this is all just principles, just applied a little bit easier and smoother with Eccentric stuff.
Yeah.
But a little bit more sport specific, if you will, longer distances, more horizontal loading.
Yeah.
You can replicate those actions a little bit better than.
We try to. I mean, it's difficult to be really specific.
Yeah.
You know, but we are looking how can we actually produce that kind of simulation that maybe could help them if you go back to snow. If you start slowly on snow and you try to find back that feelings and so on. So
yeah, of course.
So then it's also a process with the coaches. Okay, if you do that work, you also have to make them feel the same then when you go to back to the specific training.
Yeah.
And the other thing is also the general isokinetic training, also for the concentric phase, especially in rehab, where we think it's really, really, really good, because looking at the force curves, you really get a great feedback for the athletes. They can see what's happening, and you as a coach or therapist, you also see which angle or positions, there is still a great lack or a problem of activation, an answer you probably not have if you're doing just like normal training.
We forgot about the whole concentric phase, you know,
which is important as well.
But going a little bit, you know, if you have sport and you have like eccentric boost with a bar, you know, kind of find that middle ground of kind of like with the sprint, I guess.
Yeah, but I mean, anyway, you cannot do eccentric overload the whole year around. So it's a planning, it's a periodization. And,
yeah, of course.
And then,
you have to earn it. It's got to make sense.
Exactly.
You can't, you know, get them super sore for their sports stuff.
Yeah.
When that's super important.
Yeah, and then we have like training for the healthy athlete, but we also have a lot of rehab going on. So it's also two different parts that have to come back together.
So being able to create whatever stimulus you want, you know, and this is myself as a coach, just talking about 1080 as a coach, but now I work for them, obviously. Just like you get control over like concentric load, concentric velo, and eccentric velo, versus like a dumbbell is just concentric load.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like you have I guess 1 to 4, but that much more variables to control.
Yeah.
I think it's just like super cool.
And what is fun actually is that I also through that process I was more and more liking the Smith press also for normal exercises, not using the motor, because I think normally people would never use a Smith press. They just have to use the free rate. But if I'm purely thinking about maximizing muscle tendon stimulation, I often say it's important to reduce complexity. And if you do that in a stabilized system, so then you can really focus on the intensity. And this is important when we use the eccentric boost, especially because the intensity is so high. If you then also additionally should stabilize something, then I don't think it's the same activation.
It's funny you mentioned that. Matt Price.
Yes.
He spoke about the Smith machine. When he first got it, he was like, yeah, I'll bench with it, right? But then he's like, wait, the Smith machine is for stability, you know? So you can get super heavy, super specific single leg, like an RDL, because again, they're not worried about the balance piece.
Yeah.
You know?
We do a bunch of hip thrust on the Smith.
Yeah, just it's taking away the balance variable, so you can turn up the intensity variable.
Yeah. Also for single leg work, perfect.
Yeah, exactly. Super cool. So we can break the fourth wall, open floor for you to plug whatever you want to plug. Any closing thoughts that you want to toss out there? Where can people find you?
Well, people find me in Switzerland if they want to come over. We have great facilities and we are pretty open to share. I'm also
That'd be a nice trip.
Yeah, definitely. I'm also on Instagram and LinkedIn, where I try to share quite a lot of what we are doing in training, because from my point of view, it's important that we show what we can do, but not what we are able to do because we have the facilities. But we are trying to show you, okay, we are trying to make our athletes better. So this is maybe a good way to do it, but also to make them understand. But if you're going into that intensity, you have to prepare your athletes from the young age and for several years. So this is always my message, because we are talking often about strength training for children or youth athletes, and they have to learn establish good technical skills and stuff that they can be able to work with these high intensities afterwards. Because when this is not done, then the compensation when they come to the elite level, it's way more difficult.
Yeah. That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
So thank you very much again for your time. I look forward
you,
to hearing your presentation later. And yeah, this was awesome.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.